Hello, welcome back to Dumpster Fire. I'm Marley, and this will be part 3 of Crisis on Infinite Earths review. So far in the crossover, part 1 was pretty disappointing. Part 2 was just, it's okay. Then you had part 3. Part 3, I'd say out of, so far in the crossover is, decent. Although, the pacing was kind of off when it introduced some characters too. Excuse me. But it was great. It was a lot of banter in this episode, but I really like some of the cameos. The cameos actually did do something in this crossover too. Obviously, you had the Brandon Routh Superman, Kevin Conroy's Bruce Wayne, and the Tom Welling Smallville. Those didn't really do much except for Brandon Routh's, and I guess Kevin Conroy's in a way. They show that Kate is the paragon of courage, and Brandon Routh's Superman definitely had something to do with the story in part 2 of the crossover. Part 3, I think, where the cameos were definitely the strongest. Well, not the strongest, but they actually did do something in this episode. Lucifer made an appearance in here. Lucifer, the show, was confirmed in the crossover, or confirmed in the Arrowverse, sorry. And it's great that he has a scene with Constantine, because those are two devilish characters. Two characters that deal in the dark arts, or the dark magic. And it was a fun scene, but he also actually did do something. He gave Constantine the card, which sent Constantine, Diggle, and Mia into purgatory so they can bring Oliver's soul back from the dead. But then we later find out that Oliver has to train to become someone else, that being the Spectre. So, it was great. Even though it was a fun scene, it also did something in the story. We know that Tom Ellis's Lucifer was a great segue into purgatory and Oliver becoming the Spectre. So, I thought that was great. You also get Ryan Choi. Now, Ryan Choi isn't really a cameo, but it's a new character. In the comics, Ryan Choi becomes the second Atom, and although he doesn't become the Atom in the crossover, I'd say that he was pretty good. He's one of the best characters in this entire crossover, and I'll kind of go more in depth about that in part 4, because I think part 4 is definitely when his character was the strongest. We learned a lot about his character in part 3, but his character was definitely the strongest in part 4. And I'd say that in terms of the crossover as an entirety, Crisis on Infinite Earths is basically a character study for Ryan Choi's character in the Arrowverse. He doesn't become the Atom, but his moral ambiguity gets tested. His his will to stand up and become a paragon becomes tested too, because he's the paragon of humanity. And again, I'm going to go more in depth about that in part 4 of the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover review. But yeah, it was great. He had a lot of self-doubt, but with help of Iris and others who went to go find him, he was able to be like, okay, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna save the multiverse. His character art, again, was great. One thing I thought was good at first, but then was realized looking back, his pacing was off, was Black Lightning. Now, Black Lightning, I'm currently watching that right now, so I don't really know a lot about Black Lightning, but it was nice to see him in finally confirm the Arrowverse, because when the show first came out, I think the showrunners of that show said that it was not in the Arrowverse, which I guess they did this so they can keep this as a surprise, but they might as well just have confirmed that it was in the Arrowverse, because Black Lightning, well, he's not a very well-known character, but he's still in terms of if you're a comic book goer, I guess you know who Black Lightning would be, who he is, and that he is DC material. So it was great to know that he is in the Arrowverse now, but would have preferred to know that earlier. So because right now I'm catching up on all Black Lightning. I'm still currently in the first season. Would have preferred to know that he was in the Arrowverse, so then I would have started watching earlier, because if he wasn't in the Arrowverse, I wouldn't have watched, honestly, because I'm already watching a lot of shows, and doing that just because like some shows are more connected, where they're connected to other shows. Like all the Arrowverse shows are connected to one another in some way, shape, or form. Well, they are now, but like before this crossover event, they weren't. Some shows were connected, some shows weren't. Black Lightning was one of the shows I was not connected to. The rest of the DC shows, I would have preferred if it was, because now I have to watch. I have to watch a lot of Black Lightning. I still need to catch up on what's going on. But yeah, it was nice to have him in here. But the pacing was kind of off because like in the last episode of Black Lightning before the crossover event, you know, his Earth got destroyed. You know, his entire family got wiped out from existence. So like Black Lightning, he would have been pretty mad, and he has anger issues. Like I'm already watching the first season of Black Lightning, and yeah, he already has anger issues. That's part of his character. But at the same time, like, you know, I would have liked to see that anger and rage come out of him when he first got sent to Earth 1 to help out the heroes. But it's like, okay, they have a mini fight scene, but after that he's like, okay, I'll help you guys out. It's like, what? Like you were just introduced like I'd say 30 seconds ago, and then now all of a sudden you're helping out the heroes. You don't even know who any of them are, other than the fact that like Pariah told you that your Earth was just destroyed, and now you can like be the good person and like prevent other Earths from getting destroyed. What? Like, shouldn't he be like very heartbroken and like devastated that his entire family and his entire Earth just got wiped out? So like, I don't know. It would have been nice to have him kind of have like a breakdown in some ways, like, you know. But instead we're just like jump straight into the actions. Like, okay, yeah, help us out. And it was like, okay, I'll do whatever, you know. Again, it was nice to see him, but at the same time, would have liked to have more time taken into building his character and like having him like more of an interaction with the rest of the heroes as well. It's like, who are you people and why should I help you out? He does like actually have that scene, but it's like, I'd say like a 1 minute scene, and that's it, you know. I don't know. Like, I thought it was great. You know, I thought it was great to have him in the Arrowverse, but the way that they introduced him in the Arrowverse was like not good, you know. But one thing that is good is the Earth 90s Flash. The Earth 90s Flash made another appearance in the Arrowverse. His first appearance was in the Arrowverse last year in Elseworlds crossover event, which set up this crossover event, which is Crisis on Infinite Earths. And his death was both good and bad. I didn't like how he was killed simply because of a treadmill, but his intentions were good, and the reason why he did it was also good too. And his death scene in the actual when his actual death scene, I thought that was great. Like, he had his life flash before his eyes, and you had that like flashback scene from the Earth 90s Flash. They actually took a scene from the 90s Flash show and had it as like, okay, this is life flashing before his eyes, and you know, right before he vanishes. And this is apparently supposed to be the Flash vanishes missing in Crisis newspaper. You know, instead of our Barry Allen, the Earth 1 Barry Allen, it's the Earth 90 Barry Allen, from the 90s Flash show. So, you know, I thought his death scene was great. It's one of the best deaths. It's, yeah, a really good death scene in this crossover event. But again, treadmill, like, not really good way to send off a character, but okay, you know, it's the Flash, you know. I don't really know much what to say about that. It's good, but like, thinking back now, the way that he was killed was kind of stupid. I would have preferred to I would have had him to fight some of the Shadow Demons. Which, speaking of that, where are the Shadow Demons? Shouldn't they be like terrorizing Earth 1, because like they're next? But instead, we just have, all we know is that there's the antimatter wave, which just keep on coming, you know. And the Anti-Monitor kind like made a half appearance in this episode. He was like, what do you call it? He like took like mind controlled what's your name, Harbinger, and then infiltrated the ship, or the Wave Rider. So I guess so he can kill the. I actually don't really know why it was like that. I guess because that happened in the comics, but like, I would much rather prefer to see the actual Anti-Monitor fight the Monitor instead, but instead you have the Anti-Monitor as Harbinger fight the Monitor, and the ending was good. I mean, because like he infiltrates them, he beats up a lot of the heroes, and eventually, he destroys the entire destroys the entire multiverse, and Pariah like just in the last second saves the Paragons and sends them to the dawn of time. Well, not dawn of time. The next, what's it called? Was that, yeah? It's like the it was that one point that is outside space and time. I forgot what it's called. It's been a while since I watched Legends of Tomorrow. Well, not a while, but it's a while since I know my Legends of Tomorrow lore. But yeah, they were sent to like the end of time. Basically, it exists outside of like all of space or like in reality. So that's like the safe haven for the Paragons. Although I don't really know why they only like Pariah only say the Paragons and no one else. I get that the Paragons are important, but like, why just them? Why not like save the other characters too, like Superman? Like the two Supermen were in, or no, sorry, the Earth 38 Superman was there on the Wave Rider. He could have been saved too, even though he's on the Paragon. He still should have been saved, but you know, I don't know. Again, not really much explanation was given in this episode. It's just like, just accept it. But well, it was better paced and written. It's just, again, not enough explanation was given, like how and why Harbinger was mind controlled by the Anti-Monitor. I get that like the Harbinger was seduced by the Anti-Monitor to like find him, so then like, you know, it was basically like a trap. But like, why and how, you know, we don't really know that. We just know that like the Harbinger was basically possessed by the Anti-Monitor and was sent to I guess to infiltrate the heroes, but like there wasn't really a lot of explanation given. It was just like, yeah, she's there just so that she can like beat up the heroes without the Anti-Monitor actually doing it himself. I don't know. I really don't know. The ending, though, again, like I said, the ending I think was pretty good with Anti-Monitor destroying the entire multiverse. I'd say it's on par with Infinity War 2. Like the ending, at least, it's on par with Infinity War, with a lot of people getting dusted, and Thanos basically living out the rest of his life on a farm. I thought that was similar to here. The Anti-Monitor destroys the entire multiverse, and now the heroes are like in a very, very like bad place. You know, they're like basically hopeless. So yeah, that's part 3 of the crossover. It's definitely the best so far, like because parts 1, 2, and 3 were aired, and then you had like that 1 month break, and then we got parts 4 and 5. This, again, it was good. The cameos were great, but at the same time, I would have preferred it if they had a much bigger role. They still did something. The cameos in this crossover actually had a part to play, but I would have preferred if they had more to do. Like Brandon Routh Superman. Brandon Routh Superman was a cameo, but he actually had a lot to do. He was a Paragon. Which, speaking of Brandon Routh Superman, he also I guess like Lex Luthor changed reality, and instead he became the Paragon of Truth, replacing Brandon Routh Superman. I thought that was great. You know, it was fun for him to do that. Like, this Lex Luthor is a fun character, and I really like his character. So, you know, all in all, this episode was okay. It was all right. Again, on par with Infinity War, with the ending with the Earth getting destroyed. That was great. I thought that was a great ending. And it was also, it builds up suspense because, again, 1 month break before we get parts 4 and 5. And not only that, there's also a 1 month time jump between parts 3 and parts 4. You know, the heroes are on, I think it's called the Nexus Point. Yeah, let's just pretend it's called the Nexus Point. The heroes are stuck there for a month, and some of them like almost lose their sanity, you know. So I thought this was great. It was a great ending. It was great. Basically, Crisis on Infinite Earths. Parts 1, 2, and 3 are the Infinity War, and then parts 4 and 5 are the End Game. That's what I think of it. So, you know, all in all, this episode was all right. It was much better than parts 1 and 2. But I just preferred that, like, Again, well, not prefer what. There's just some stupid stuff in there, but you know, it's what it is. Like Crisis on Infinite Earths, if I were to say, is basically it's basically a comic book come to life as a show. That's what I think of it. Because like when you look at it, like comic books, like they can have some stupid stuff in there too. Like because it's a comic book, you can do whatever you want. With movies and shows, you have to be a little bit more careful. Well, movies mainly to be careful. Shows you can kind of have a bit more leniency in it because you have more time to build on things because it's in a season, you know. But with Crisis on Infinite Earths, it's literally a comic book brought to life. That's what I can like. That's what I can say about it. So, and then this episode, part three, is definitely feels like a comic book. It's like, yeah, you have the heroes meet up with Tom Ellis, and then you have other heroes who meet up with, excuse me, Earth's 90s Flash, and his death scene was definitely taken straight out of a comic book. It felt like that too. It's very similar to the Flash's death in Crisis on Infinite Earths, where he runs so fast that he vanishes. It was the same thing here, except it happened on the treadmill and on the crossover event here. But the death scene was still great. It was still both good and bad. It's just that like he died on a treadmill, so that sucks. But at the same time, you know, it was good for him to have his life flash before his eyes, and that was great. So yeah, that's part three. Again, it's just an all right episode. Stay tuned for parts 4 and 5 of the crossover event. This is where it gets better, except for part 5. Part 5, so I'm going to be ranting in part 5. But anyways, stay tuned for part 4 and 5, and I'll see you later.